Welcome back to another episode of Sketchy Situations, where I play Stroke of Luck, an Ironsworn Starforged actual play fiction series. Ironsworn Starforged is a game written and designed by Sean Tonkin, and as of the time of recording this episode, it is now live to the public to pre-order the deluxe physical copy, as well as grab yourself a PDF from DriveThruRPG or itch.io, or also from his storefront on ironswornrpg.com. I'll have a link to this in the description below, and I really hope you join the game and the community. We have a Discord, and it's just a great place to be. I can't say too much more about it. You have to experience it for yourself. And if you're into interacting with the developers of games, Sean is fairly active despite what he says. Everything he says is meaningful, insightful, funny, encouraging. He's an awesome guy. I want to thank everybody up to this point and in future episodes that have supported me, left comments, suggestions, and subscribed. You're awesome, and it has kept me encouraged. Which is to say that I am actually sick right now, so if I don't sound the absolute best, I'm sorry. I'm doing the best I can. I have also already released the second chapter of Chipset's story. She has moved on to her space exploration. I'll also have a link to my website below, so you can check that out if you like a good read. Now that I think I have all the marketing out of the way, let's recapture what happened last week with Erin Slater. The Ghost of the Forge was directed to Reprise, a planet-side settlement on the planet Scourge. As an independent mining company, it doesn't have to answer to the board in terms of its operations, which Aaron quickly finds out as he tries to maneuver his way to prohibited sections. Instead of being patient and just waiting for his contact to show up, he instead decides to take the entirely illegal route by pretending to be a hunter, which is about as bad as being caught red-handed stabbing a person. But by the gods above, he is greatly successful, although using public terminals seemed to be his greatest weakness. We ended with a strong hit with a match, using the scoundrel asset to pretend to be a hunter yet again, which led us to another pathway down to the mining area and possibly some goods down below. We undertook an expedition which was simply marked as reach the mining area, and it scored a strong hit. Not a match, but still a strong hit. So we've already got a chance to mark progress, and now it's time to envision where are we at. I went ahead and wrote the descriptor and focus Fiery Crossing, and that was easy enough. Thankfully, I had strangely envisioned some geysers that spew upwards as Aaron was actually coming into dock onto Reprise. So I feel like where we're at is this narrow corridor. It's dimly lit. He has his headlamp on, but there are these occasional ventilation systems that must be cut off from the main structure, but at this point have probably been eroded, but still. I'm using the infested location theme for when I roll things, because Reprise is overrun with diverse life forms and has aggressive plant life. I feel like that's kind of an infestation the way it spreads out. So since this corridor has been more or less cut off for some time, no one's been down here to clean it, and you can already see sprouts coming from the corners, breaking through the paneling. Returning to the thought of the vents I mentioned earlier, Aaron can actually hear the boiling liquid shooting upward not too far away, which suggests that likely when this hallway was made, it was made too close to various vents on this planet, and it wasn't safe. He turns his headlamp over to look at the vent, and he can see actually this green liquid slipping downward, dripping downward. It is mixed with spores and other material here, probably decaying material. And where it drips down, you can see where there has been heavy growth. Beyond that, there's not much for him to interact with, and he wants to focus on moving forward, so he makes sure to just step over these colorful mushrooms. So we're going to roll Undertake Expedition yet again. We're doing this plus wits because he's just going to stay vigilant, just do what he's been already doing. and we have a wondrous weak hit. Now, even on a weak hit, I mark progress, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. But now I have to choose between making a -2 suffer move or a -1 to 2 different condition meters. Or I could face a peril at my next waypoint. Since I'm greedy with all of my stats, I'm just going to face a peril because that means I may not have to necessarily lose anything. Of course, narration can sometimes end up worse off. So first we're going to see what this peril is. From the location theme for infested, we have hazardous architecture or terrain. Alright, descriptor and focus, my absolute favorite oracles. I have preserved relic. Alright, so obviously the structure at this point is easily able to be considered unstable. This place hasn't seen any maintenance. It's probably been chewed away by all of the organic material that is beginning to build up here. Preserved relic makes me think of using very old technology that is not considered safe even on a extremely good day. To be preserved, it means that it was probably put back together in a very patchwork, scrappy way. You know what? I'm going to go with a pulley elevator. So what happened in this area that Erin is coming up to, there was some sort of sinkhole underneath this part of the walkway. It was either a ramp or a set of stairs. No way to know because it's been completely pulled downward and there's a wide gap from here to there. A normal, intelligent person would just go back and give up, but not whoever chose to use this. Instead, they made a pulley elevator. It's so wide, the average person wouldn't make that leap and would simply drop to their doom. The unfortunate part of this pulley system is just how ragged it is. There's so much moisture and heat in this corridor that it's already heavily eroded, and you can tell that with too much weight, it will completely fall apart. But somehow these people have been using it to move equipment and goods and even people on a regular basis, so Erin's gonna give it a go. It looks like it works best with 2 people, one person manning the chain and another person staying steady on this rusty metal platform. Lucky for Erin, he can play the part of 2 people at one time using his kinetic ability. He's already gone this far. It wouldn't do any good to turn back now. He starts to put his foot on the platform and it feels slick with this soft layer of furry moss and condensation from the humidity in this corridor. The chain is still locked into place. He starts to focus on it, on the idea of holding on to it, being 2 people at one time. He envisions unlocking the chain and feels it jolt for a second. His heart jumps and then slowly starts to ease the chain, allowing him to descend. So we're facing danger with iron and kinetic, and when we do this, I have to lose 2 momentum in order to add 2 to my roll. My iron is a +3, so let's see how this goes. We've got a strong hit, so that means that Erin succeeds and we get a +1 to our momentum. So technically I did still do a -2 suffer move by losing 2 momentum, but I got 1 back, so I got half of the problems. The platform touches down and it takes everything to not just jettison himself off of it. He knows that the platform is still slick, so jumping off too fast would likely send him backward and down into the hole that he was just trying to avoid. He takes a careful step off and then finally onto solid ground. He locks the chain back into place and then promptly gives the entire situation an enormous middle finger. But he's past it and we're on to the next leg of the journey. We're just going to fixate on getting the most amount of progress we can, which is really fast with a troublesome expedition. And I'm going to use wits because it's been doing us well so far, and I feel like he's still keeping a vigilant eye out, though he has no doubts that a few vagrants that use this tunnel system may not be so welcoming to seeing a hunter in their area. Regardless, the plant life and small creature life here seem to be pressing in a little bit. He needs to make sure he's not touching up against it because he has no idea what it can or would do if it touches him. And so, undertake an expedition plus wits, we have a brilliant miss. On a miss, you are waylaid by a crisis or arrive at a waypoint to confront an immediate hardship or threat. Do not mark progress and pay the price. Since we're in a tight corridor, I won't say that we've been waylaid because there's not anywhere else he can go but backwards. So instead, he's going to run into an immediate threat on his way to the next step. Rolling on the infestation location theme, we have creatures attack without warning. So that means that already I get to use the creature oracles. I did look through the foes and NPC section, and I didn't feel like there was anything appropriate for this particular area. So let's see what I can roll up really quick using Stargazer, which is a simple click of the rando button, and it generates all the features that you're looking for initially. And what do we have? It actually some pretty good stuff, I will say myself. Very well themed for where I'm at. For the scale, the size of the creature, we have tiny, about rodent sized. Basic form is plant/fungus, which is awesome. We are in such a place that lends for that form. Then we go to first look, which is mineral or metallic. I'm going to try to see how we're going to mix metal and plant to make that make a little bit sense. And encountered behavior, hoarder. So as soon as I saw rodent size and plant fungus, I saw these little green puffballs. Green, pink, purple, just a lot of different colors that would be alien-like plant life. As for the mineral or metallic look, I'm going to go with the idea its little teeth, which is always chomping away, is most visible. It kind of sparkles in a sense if light is shined on it, giving it this metallic sheen. It's never not eating, always trying to choose something, if not just its neighbors. So the encountered behavior, hoarder, I guess it's gathering in an area and a place where there seems to be a lot of its favorite food. So I'm going to go ahead and just check out an extra step. That would be revealed aspect. I have shape changer. That's fitting. So now I'm seeing these huge groups of mousecapuffs. Yeah, I'm gonna go with mousecapuffs for right now. And when they unite, they can create more complex forms and work in conjunction with each other to fight more effectively. So how do they catch Erin off guard? He's avoiding things that are growing on the walls, and when he sees it, he just keeps on going by, just doesn't get close to it. But if he doesn't think that it's able to actually move on its own, he's not looking for anything else to happen. And that's what he starts to do, is he's continuing onward. He can hear things moving, but that's no different than what he has been hearing so far in here. And when he begins to move past this rather active looking growth, it jumps him, completely catching him from his peripheral vision. It launches off of the side, tries to attach to him. As he starts to swat it away, he realizes it's not one single growth, it's a bunch of tiny gnawing mouths. So now Erin is going to enter the fray, plus wits, because he's been ambushed. I'm not using kinetic in this situation because he's caught unaware, so he can't concentrate and use it against something he's not even sure what he's up against yet. And what I have here is a glorious miss. That's a 9 versus a 10 and a 9. Even if I was to have enough momentum for this, I would still have a weak hit. So before I read the consequences, we're going to rank this troublesome and call this escape from the mousecapuffs. And I'm making this troublesome not just because I want to get through it quickly, but I feel like they don't take a lot of damage in order to ward off or destroy. Whereas for the miss, we start off in a bad spot. Now in this bad spot, he manages to wipe them off of him, a few of them still chewing on his coat, but they're starting to encircle around him, building the semi-wall. He's backed up against the other wall. He can see these shiny, metallic, huge buck teeth that are meant for just non-stop gnawing. And he recognizes these things from what he's flown past when he was first coming in, things that were creeping along the top of the mushrooms towards other creatures. These things are rampant, and it makes sense because in a group they stick, hold, and never let go. Erin is now going to react under fire. He's taking out his metal ball from his pocket. He focuses on it as he throws it down onto the ground or at these things, and it bursts out with spikes and just sweeps his hand around, causing it to bulldoze over these things. So that's iron plus kinetic, taking away from my momentum, and I have a strong hit, a 9 versus a 5 and a 1. That puts my momentum back up to 7 from 6, and envisioning this, it just looks like these things are popping up into the air or just getting stuck to the end of these spikes until they become pulverized, and it's forcing them to kind of run backwards a bit, afraid of this new force that is just mowing through them. Listening to this erratic chittering, he decides it's the best time to try to make his getaway. He's not out here trying to destroy them all, he just wants to get to the next leg of his journey and out of this blasted tunnel if he can. So he's going to gain ground plus edge because he's fleeing, and I'm still going to use kinetic as he uses the metal ball behind him to dissuade them from following. And another great strong hit. That's a 10 versus a 4 and a 7. I get to pick 2 out of the bonuses that I get, so I'm going to mark progress because we want to be done with this, and I'm going to take 2 momentum because I seem to use kinetic a lot. But for Erin, as he's making his getaway, he notices them beginning to retreat, finding this prey not worth the amount of numbers that they're using. So he's going to take some decisive action. I know we're only at 6 out of 10 boxes, but you don't need to get all of them to give it a shot. Alright, not so bad. We have a 6 versus a 2 and an 8. That's a weak hit. Now, a weak hit means that he has achieved his objective, which is to get away from the mouse capus. But it doesn't come without a cost. And rolling on the table, we have it's worse than you thought. Make a suffer move, -2. I'm loving how these oracles are just melding what I'm saying ahead of time. Since these are chewy little monsters, it's easy to surmise that when he stops to take a breath, hands on knees, he realizes he still hears that insistent chewing noise, and when he reaches around trying to find if he sees another one, well, he does. They're inside of his jacket and they have chewed right through his inner pockets. There's holes in his inner pouches where things have clearly fallen out and they are just munching through. He picks them up and just throws them back in the direction where the others were, but the damage is done. He doesn't even know what necessarily fell out and where it is. Just, ugh. So unlike the decisive action with our last encounter, I'm not going to call this quits at 6 boxes because that's a little risque. I think I've put my leg out there enough for one session. Erin is now going to proceed further using shadow, keeping his head down just in case. The noise from that earlier incident had to have set anything off that might still be here. More predators or other people that he still hasn't run into. And what do you have it? I'm getting a lot of 10s here. 10 versus a 1 and a 2 gives me a strong hit. We mark progress at 9 boxes. And yet I don't feel like I'm done yet. There has been no further incident, but that doesn't mean we're out of the woods yet. He wanted to take this route because there was a possibility that there were goods here, and he hasn't run into anything where they could be at. So in this area he's in, which seems to be very close to the exit, there are a couple of abandoned adjacent rooms, and he's going to explore this waypoint. You can only do this with wits, which is pretty high, so that is a strong hit. A 9 versus a 2 and a 7. I'm going to take +2 momentum, bringing us up to 9 momentum. And it says that I find an opportunity, envision a favorable insight, situation, resource, or encounter. Now, funny enough, I ended up rolling descriptor and focus before I remembered why we originally came down here, what the 2 words were. I have ensnaring material, and the original 2 words were construct trade. So I put a lot of thought into this moment, like, what is an ensnaring material? First thought that I had was glue or a trap, something sticky. But that doesn't seem like something that he wants right now. Then I thought about ensnaring does mean a trap, an entanglement. Material is more than just minerals or cloth. It can also be media. I also remembered that construct trade was rolled with action and theme. Construct means to create, and trade, well, creating trade. So here is what Erin found. Ghost wasn't new to the game of hiding secret rooms. He found this one in particular fairly quick. It was painted poorly, and the camouflage of dirt and glued on rocks really didn't work as well as they hoped. And I think they knew that because there was also moss between the cracks. He did his best not to disturb the setup as much as possible, and slipped inside. It was completely dark, but temperature controlled, which was enough to say jackpot. He felt around and found a light switch that was still poor lighting, but with the headlamp, he saw stacked crates, some hanging wide open and empty, others dented with clear force from a blunt object, and some of them hit from projectiles. There was a crude workbench with scrap hard disks and data storage shards and other dismantled technology. But what caught Ghost's eyes was the record index sitting nearby. Swiping through it briefly, he realized it was an entire list of clientele and available product. This was the information on the undermarket, and so it was labeled in this document. But when he tried to dig deeper into certain sections, it stopped him, asking for a password. He didn't have time to look around and try to figure out what a password could be, and if they were smart, it should change on a regular basis. He set down the record index and sought out a backup. Again, if they were smart, they had backups, and that's just what he found. But the date was about a month ago. That was good enough. He pocketed the data shard and made his way out of the room. He's now going to end this jaunty little walk through the tunnel, and strong hit. 9 versus a 5 and a 6. The door on this side is more dusty than covered with plant life, which is to be expected this far low, and he can see around the cracks that there's light on the other side. He eases it open, and thankfully it doesn't creak. He exits out into this well-lit, stony corridor, and he doesn't hear anyone nearby. And that's good enough for him right now. And that's good enough for me too. As we come to the end of this session, I want to thank you all for listening so much. Please, if you haven't already, go buy yourself a copy of Starforged, join the Discord, and look for me on Twitter. And until we meet again, stay in trouble.